Thursday, December 1st, made it through another month. Today, we're talking about none other than Nintendo, something we've talked a lot about on these talks with Luce Ventures. Hello, Luce.
Hello, good morning. We're having a TED Talk on Nintendo.
Yes. Do you have a voice for Reggie Phil's Ames?
I have a voice for Shigeru Miyamoto, or as his close friends refer to him, as I call him, Shig Maya.
Would it be racist to do that, or nah? Go for it.
Racist? No, now I don't want to do it. Hey, are we gonna bring people up, or how are we doing this?
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
bring some
bring
people
people.
up.
All right. Yeah.
I'll let you choose. Only those worthy a Nintendo discussion may come.
We'll do a few, and then we'll rotate out as we go.
Do you want to kick us off? What is Nintendo? What is a Nintendo?
What
Luce?
is a Nintendo? What even is a Nintendo?
Yeah, like conceptually, philosophically.
So, for those who don't know, Nintendo is one of the largest video game console manufacturers, game makers in the world. They've been around for a long time. They started off as a toy company, toy and actually playing card company, and they got a really solid business, really good company, very conservative management historically, and yeah, they've had a few down years here and there. I think what was it, the Wii U? I think nobody liked that, but yeah, overall they're the most successful video game console manufacturer in terms of like total units sold. I think they have more uh, like top 10 game hits, we'll call them, than any other console, even though the library is much smaller. So they definitely have a dedicated fan base. They tend to be more about quality versus quantity, at least for their fan base. Not everybody likes their video games. But but yeah, they know their audience. They have a lot of hits that people just are literally addicted to, like Pokemon, Mario, with Zelda. Um, and I'm so sad that Metroid Prime 4 hasn't come out. But they have a lot of good hits, and yeah, an extremely loyal fan base, almost basically to the extent that the video games could suck and they'll still buy the hell out of them. So that's the company. If it weren't video games, if it was a service, a product, the markets would be all over it. And frankly, if the volume was better for the stock, investors would be all over this. So I think it's a very long term value play. I'll explain why I think so. I think they are set for growth. But this is very much in the sense of like a Warren Buffett investment. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet Warren Buffett's liquidity and investment criteria for liquidity because the volume's too low. But yeah, we can go more into that if anybody wants to ask a few questions before we really get the ball rolling.
Luce, I just posted a special exclusive DD for this talk. It's in the comment section. Exclusive to WallStreetBets. And
Exclusive. Yeah. All right. I was going to post the DD I made, what was it? Something like 9 months ago, beginning of this year. If anyone's interested, it's actually most of it, the vast majority of it holds up, and surely there are some updates that are required, but it's not too far out of date. So give me a few seconds. I'll go ahead and post that. Yeah, is it anyone have any questions? Is anyone in Nintendo?
So, Luce, are you recommending just straight shares? Is there a target, or just as a long-term kind of play you're doing?
This is a boring long-term play. There are no options. So I know like a million WallStreetBets voices just cried out in pain, but there are no options on this. But the optimism about that is you can't throw your monthly pay check away on zero DTE YOLOs, and instead you'll be boring and collect a dividend, which is nice. And I think it's about 3%, and it's probably going to stay about 3%. at least through next year. It is variable, but they have a very solid dividend payment history. So that would be the only play. But I guess if nobody has any specific questions, we can talk a little bit about why it's a good play. Shall I?
Yes, please. I've got some questions for later.
All right, then. All right, so synopsis. As I mentioned earlier, titles, video games that Nintendo makes, they are some of the highest selling video games in history. Pokemon is one of the big ones. They have part ownership in Pokemon. I'll go into a little bit of detail on that later. They are opening up Super Nintendo World theme parks, and I believe there was one that already opened in
Japan.
Universal Studios. Yeah, they have two that open in the Universal Studios parks in Japan, and they have two opening up in the U.S., and now they have another one that's opening up in Singapore. Those are also set to have sort of like add-on, parks like Donkey Kong or whatever. So that there's a good push into theme parks, which I think is good because they have a ton of cash and they have the ability to really capitalize on the intellectual property that they've built up over time. They're also sort of pushing back into cinema. I say pushing back because they have come out with movies and a few shows in the past, but now I think they just acquired like a productions studio, film production studio. So they got the Super Mario Brothers movie coming out, which I mean, frankly, it's for kids. I'm not gonna go fucking see it, but as long as kids like it, what do I care? Good money to the company. But assuming that goes well, they will almost definitely continue to push into cinema. As I mentioned, the dividends, they've paid variable semi-annual dividends since 1985, which I believe qualifies them as a dividend aristocrat. For those holding in a taxable account, if you want to reclaim a portion of the foreign dividend tax as a tax credit, not in like a IRA. And another quick note: Melvin Capital took advantage of low trading volume back in 2018 with a short position on the stock, contributing to a 27% decrease in the stock price from its May 2018 peak. Also, Kathy Wood sold the shit out of it on a daily basis and caused the stock price to go down as well with her bullshit daily trading. So yeah, I thought those things were worth pointing out. But honestly, that last point is kind of a risk. It does have low volume. So worth mentioning, but also as a potential downside risk. The ticker is NTDOY, by the way. And they recently did a 8-for-1 share split. And that ticker, if you were going to make a play on Nintendo, I would recommend that one versus the other one, which has an F instead of a Y, because of volume, because of liquidity. So this was just far better. And I've been holding for a while. This is a very long-term play. I think overall Nintendo is it's a really, really strong business, and we'll go into the financials in a second, but they're actually poised for growth. Japan's economy has kind of been hit pretty hard through the past year with everything going on in the world. But they are looking fairly good going forward. So we already talked about what they do, talked about Super Nintendo World. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about financials.
Yes.
All right. So so they did have a decrease in sales over the past year, and that was largely attributable to the foreign exchange rates, the devaluation of the yen relative to the dollar. It was a pretty big impact on their sales. But now that the Bank of Japan is coming in and trying to prop up the yen, as they've done many times in the past, and they are very effective at it. the yen should rise. It's kind of a weird relationship there. Technically, that's supposed to hurt Nintendo stock price, but the opposite has been happening. So either way, I'm just looking at the company and just itself on a standalone basis. Won't talk too much about the impact of the yen. But because of that, there was a decrease in sales. Or I think either way, but that just had a large impact. So now they released earnings maybe a few weeks ago, I believe. Yeah. Okay, about a month ago. And they are expecting, they revised their estimates forecast up. So they're expecting to generate more sales. They're shifting to a bit more of a mix of digital content versus physical, which is better for their margins. So their sales are still really high. Margins are higher because it's lower cost. And they're also picking up their sales of DLC, which has been a thing for other video game makers, the other, their big competitors, PlayStation, Xbox, right? So that's picking up a lot. They mentioned that in their last earnings report. So that's good for the margins. Let's see. They did have some issues with the semiconductor chip shortage, but they are carrying on as business as usual, basically, and that's largely attributable to the fact that their sales mix has shifted to a more digital presence. So it hasn't hit them too hard. And now going forward, there are rumors talking about their next console, which there have been rumors for a while. I think if they were going to do it, and they were going to do it, say, within the next year, they probably wouldn't announce it until we get fairly close, maybe a handful of months away, because they don't want to cannibalize sales of the Nintendo Switch. So just FYI, Nintendo as a company doesn't really share a lot of information. So their estimates, their forecasts, they're not even going to include the potential money they can make from a new console. So if they do come out with a new console within the next 12 months or so, the forecast would change substantially. And in the past, assuming the console is, it's a decent console, which I think really they've only had one stinker, and then they've had a few that were like, they couldn't quite keep up with PlayStation and Xbox or whatever other consoles. But for the most part, their consoles are, are big hits. They do pretty well in that department overall. So as long as that's the case, there will be a substantial increase in sales. That could affect maybe a 10 to 20% increase in sales based on the titles that come out with the console as well. So let's see. For you multiples people, since we're talking about financials, actually, I'll take a pause. Does anyone have any questions? Because I tend to just burn through all this stuff.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go for it.
So how do the multi-currencies play a factor in their earnings? Can you kind of describe that a little bit, please?
Sorry, repeat the first few words.
What? They're the currency exchange. So, for example, if they're making money in America or Singapore or wherever they're at, how does that play into their earnings? Like, so the yen is down, of course, and of course, if they're making money in dollar to yen is a great ratio right now, right? And so I was just curious how that plays into the earnings and how we should read that from looking from the outside of not their local currency, but being able to make money.
So high level, I'm not going to go too in depth because I don't want to make this a forex or a currency talk. Yeah. But high level, the cheaper the yen is relative to the dollar, the higher sales should be for Japanese goods and services. As in your US dollar can afford more Japanese goods and services, therefore you do buy more. That's economic theory, and that applies to any currency. Whatever's low can be a lot can be purchased by whatever currency is high. So that's the gist. And then you have the manufacturing side. It depends on where those manufacturing facilities are. So for Nintendo, for the consoles, most are actually in Japan, probably some in China, maybe some in India. So there's no big issue there. If there was a lot of manufacturing being done in the US, then it's the other way around. The Japanese yen cannot afford to manufacture in the US because of very strong US dollar. So that would be, the other side of that economic theory. So as the
Right.
yen appreciates in value, you have to look at both of those sides. How much products, how much goods and services, how much Nintendo's goods and services can US dollar afford, but also how does this impact the manufacturing costs? But I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. And we just have a quick question. What's the current from YF_low wants to know, question for Luce, what's the current percentage of Nintendo games that is utilizing the cloud? Also, who is providing their cloud services?
Honestly, I have no idea. And I think Nintendo's a bit behind on the cloud. I know like cloud save, stuff like that. They did get that going, I want to say in the past, or they did start leading into that maybe in the past year. But I honestly don't know. And they they have shown, management has shown the willingness to kind of, like improve their strategy related to technology and being more, progressive, because they are definitely behind the curve on video game technology uh, relative to Sony and Microsoft and the other big video game developers. So I don't know. They are starting to push into that. There are things to work on for sure. But right now, as the business exists today, it's a little bit of the theme parks. It's some revenues attributable to uh, movies, shows, stuff like that, um, media. A good portion is attributable to merchandise and related to the video games. And then you obviously have sales of the console, Nintendo Switch, and other consoles that still might be in circulation, and then of course the video games themselves. So that's basically it. That's kind of the strength of their business. Everything else that could be added, the ways in which they need to catch up, the way I see it, they are behind. But if they improve on that, if they act on that and execute well, that should be a good thing over the long term, right? Rather than like a Nintendo's behind right now, so nobody's going to want to play the games or whatever. That's definitely not the case. At least that's what the numbers and that's what the gamers are saying.
So when you say long term, how long term are you thinking? Are you thinking like 5 years, 10 years? Like, what is when you say long term?
This is, I mean, perhaps the most boring play you'll ever hear on Wall Street Bets, because this really is a Warren Buffett style, like modern day Warren Buffett. I'm buying part of the business, right? And it's going to take a long time. Like you're expecting a long-term investment, right? So it really is long term. It's I mean, if Nintendo were to shoot up like 50% suddenly, right? Within the next 6 to 12 months or something like that, right? I'm definitely trimming, right? But I'm probably still going to hold some shares because this really is a strong business. And to kind of, I guess, to add a bit on the financial side, just to give a few reasons, few tidbits why I think that. If we look at, so first off, their margins are higher. They tend to be higher than the other video game companies, the big video game companies that people are well aware of, such as Activision, EA. They have much higher cash flow. Free cash flow yield currently is expected to be about 6% going forward, based on the next fiscal year forecast. Again, that doesn't include any potential additions or new video games that they haven't announced, or maybe new console. Who knows if that's going to happen within the next year or not. But one thing I find very interesting is they have $11.4 billion in cash, and their balance sheet is $19.2 billion. So their cash comprises 60% of the balance sheet. You can't say that about a lot of companies. to a lot of people, that's a bad thing. But this just goes to show like how liquid they are, how much cash they make. They really are a cash cow. So they don't have any debt either. So this is just a very strong company that over the long term has had really strong growth. Through COVID, they capitalized on that well. So double digit sales growth over the long term, really good margins, really good free cash flow, and a pretty good valuation at this price. So that said, it's definitely a long term. I'm invested in the business, in the company, and maybe the stock sucks it up for a little bit. I don't know. Maybe you get a better entry than I have, but the play is very long term. If it shoots up, I'm gonna trim. But this is a company that I'm holding for the very long term because as I put in my DD, somewhat jokingly, but kind of for real, Nintendo really is like the future Disney of Japan. Just the way they're getting set up. Cinema, theme parks, video games, the intellectual property. So yeah, it's very long term, years. Like this is a retirement stock for me. And then hopefully they move up in a big way sometime soon.
Nice. That cash position is nice. It answers my question. I was concerned that they got with all the spending with the theme parks and whatnot that they might have to do a capital raise at some point, but that's a huge cash position, man.
Yeah, they got zero liquidity issues. This is one of the most, people always talk about like Apple, having a lot of cash. Relative to the balance sheet, Nintendo just knocks it out of the park compared to Apple. So all that cash, no debt. If they wanted to, say we're coming out of, say we have a recession next year, and then we start coming out of that, and then global monetary policy starts to loosen, more money starts to get into the markets because everything kind of sucks, right? And we see the big Fed pivot that we're all hoping happens next year. They could just really lean into the theme parks big time. So that would be really, really nice additional revenue for them. So they have all the cash in the world to act on that.
Is there any upcoming negative things that you could possibly foresee that could affect, the stock in any way, or do you see mostly positive?
I think I would say that the biggest risk would be macroeconomic, which you would say for any stock, any company. But it's absolutely worth mentioning. So if we do have a recession, which basically we have 99% chance of a recession in the U.S. That's going to cause all stock prices to fall. Nintendo's no exception. Maybe Japanese stocks will hold up better because a lot of investors are starting to look at Japanese assets, even Warren Buffett. But that's not like they're recession proof. No, it's just a solid company. Their sales might take a hit during a recession, but of all the companies I've looked at in terms of financials, Nintendo really shouldn't have that much of a problem during a recession. Maybe video game sales hold up okay. Maybe console sales hold up okay. Maybe coming out of the recession, they release a new console. I don't know. That's all speculative. But worst case scenario, Nintendo really isn't going anywhere, and they're definitely going to hold up better than a lot of the other consumer discretionary companies. But I think it's mostly macro. I don't see any management issues. They're very conservative. They already said they're committed to paying at least around a 3% dividend going forward. They raised it slightly. The theme parks, people already love them. Maybe the ticket sales go down a bit for theme parks. But that's as it stands now, it's not even that big of a percentage of the revenue. So yeah, it's just typical macroeconomic risk that exists for all stocks right now. And if you're very concerned about that, then you're probably not buying any stocks. So maybe this one's more sensitive than the safe defensive play, right? That would be easy to believe. But yeah, just mainly macro. I honestly don't see any big issues, potential concerns related to the company specifically.
I asked in the comments earlier if there were any bears who want to come up. I got a couple upvotes, but no one responded. So if you have some retorts to Luce, post a comment so we can invite you up.
Well, there is a comment in here that says from Redditor BXD. It says, "Hey, Loose Ventures, but what about the sales and developments from competition like Sony and Microsoft? Latest data shows Sony and Microsoft console sales are way, way higher than Nintendo."
Yeah, that's because PlayStation just came out with a new console. So you have to look at the console cycles, right? And you have to pay attention to when consoles came out. But here's the thing: if ABC company sells 1 billion consoles, and then Nintendo sells 500 million, right? That's not enough to know, right? So even if Nintendo gets outsold, they're still making good money. They're still selling consoles, and relative to their balance sheet, relative to their valuation, they could still look a hell of a lot better than their competitors. So historically, Nintendo, even when they undersold their competitors, the company still did well. However, with a lot of their competitors, especially the other video game developers, and in this case, I think it's worth comparing to EA and Activision. If they don't do well, their stock price drops. So there's a big difference. You could see Nintendo as sort of more conservative. So sure, like competition could be fierce. I mean, it is fierce. But if Nintendo comes out with a new console that's the next hot shit, that's gonna sell well. So it's all about valuation, and you got to look at it relative.
Hey, not to interrupt, but I have to leave for a meeting in about 2 minutes. I posted a link under Opinion's original comment for the talk. It looks like Nintendo is using AWS, at least in some capacity. They did a case study. I posted the official AWS link under Opinion's top comment.
Oh, nice. Thanks for that. To answer the earlier guy's question for the cloud.
Oh, a lot of people are accusing you of a pump and dump, Luce.
Pump and dump. Okay, then don't buy it. Sell. Short it. All right. Does that fix it? Does that solve that problem? Fucking short Nintendo. Ignore me. Short Nintendo. Are we good? Are we good now?
Can we ask them to report back, though, please, Opinion and Loose? If they do short, to report back their losses. I would appreciate that.
I'm giving you a very long-term play that people just tend to not touch. The volume is good enough. I don't think you fucking virgins can manipulate the stock price. So me coming up here, yeah, it's gonna be front page news. Oh, WallStreetBets mod pumps and dumps stock. Oh, he's so influential. Nobody gives a shit about me, what I'm saying here. It's not going to pump and dump.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Luce, there is a comment here from SBall0909. It says, "Hey, Loose Ventures, does Nintendo produce enough IP to compete against Take-Two Interactive?"
I would argue they produce much more. Like, much more. I mean, just consider the fact they have Pokemon, I think alone. Pokemon was one of the biggest franchises in history. I think maybe they're second to some company. I think I do have it in that DD, which is a tad bit outdated in terms of franchises, success of franchises. But frankly, that data, like, nobody compiles that data, so it's just going to be a little outdated for a while. But I think Pokemon alone beats it. And speaking of that, I did mention I was going to talk about their ownership in the Pokemon company. Nintendo is very tight-lipped about everything, but specific to their ownership in the Pokemon company, they own at least a third, so at least 33% of the Pokemon company, and they don't. That's all they've said. That's all that's been reported. I would say they own anywhere from 33% to 49% because I don't believe they have majority control of the company. So it could be up to 49% is what I think. Either way, they're making a ton of money. They get their share from sale of merchandise, the use of intellectual property, all that stuff. So even at 33%, you would say they have 33% ownership of one of the most successful franchises in history. So yeah, IP, I'm pretty sure they're substantially bigger than Take-Two. I looked at the numbers, but simply because of the fact they have Pokemon, Mario, I mean, those two right there probably seal the deal, I'm sure.
Is there any rumored or something acquisition target you think might help them?
Like Nintendo acquiring other companies?
Yeah, either console maker or video game company.
They're right now, they're a little too conservative to do that. And I kind of don't blame them because I'd rather them execute on their growth strategy. It's a little iffy right now, what with the recession coming up. But they have been snatching up like smaller companies, and I think it's mostly been related to costs and helping them with their growth strategies relating to like cinema, the theme parks, stuff like that. But they have been relatively small acquisitions, so there's no precedent for that. They don't have a big history of that. I wish they would just acquire the Pokemon company. That would be great. But historically they've been conservative. They have been paying a bit more attention to investors in the past year or so. My theory is that through COVID, their investors got a taste of massive growth and just capitalizing big on a world event, right? So it was COVID, everyone's staying at home. A ton of people bought Nintendo Switches, so they had what's rare. What rarely happens is a console comes out, sales are great, sales dip, and then they go back up. So that's literally what happened for Nintendo. And then Animal Crossing was like one of the highest, one of the best selling games like ever. So everybody's playing the crap out of that during COVID. So I think investors got a taste from those that ridiculous increase in sales. I think investors got a taste of what it's like. Okay, we should capitalize on the markets more often, and I think that's why they're pushing more into the strategy. Even little stuff like doing the recent share split, and they said that they want Japanese investors to be able to buy more shares. They wanted their shares to be more accessible to the retail crowd. So there are hints that they're paying more attention to investors. So maybe this is speculation. Maybe they get more aggressive with acquisition stuff like that. They definitely have the cash to do that.
I think you might have talked about this already, Luce, but Hardy Rection wants to know, what about foreign currency risk for buying the Nintendo ADR?
So I mentioned I don't really want to go into Forex. I mean, foreign currency risk for buying an ADR, that exists with all ADRs. So really the only real risk related to foreign currency is just the risk to the business, which, I mentioned earlier, is just economic theory. If the US dollar is strong, you could buy more relative to the yen. You could buy more Japanese goods and services, right? More Nintendo goods and services, theoretically speaking. On the manufacturing side, it's actually downside risk if they were manufacturing a lot in Nintendo, if they were producing a lot of their components. In the U.S. So yeah, I mean, buying an ADR, it's just like buying any other stock. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about.
Thanks for bringing me up, Luce. I just wanted to add to Luce's bullish motion. If you look at the millions of units sold per console over time, Wii has actually sold more consoles than Xbox Ones have been sold. So super bullish on Nintendo. Yes, people play Microsoft and they play the Xbox a lot, but the data's there that they're selling more consoles.
Can I opinion?
Sure.
Hello.
So I've been in Nintendo. As you guys know, I got about $2,000 in there. I bought it before the split. My cost basis, I think, is $10.47 a share. It's up to $10.70 something right now. You guys mentioned console sales. I'd like to point out that that's upwards of like 60 million sales since Breath of the Wild 1 came out. So Splatoon 3 recently released. Biggest, I think, like number 3 biggest release of all time out of all the consoles. Splatoon 3 was huge. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is hands down the worst Pokemon title that's ever came out. Ever. Terrible game. Everybody fucking hates that game.
and they're buying the shit out of it. Yeah.
The professor's not named after a tree. It's the first title in the entire series that the professor's not fucking tree.
I just want to mention, by the way, I'm not like a Super Nintendo fanboy. Like, I'm coming at this, like, looking at the company. I do like some of the, I did grow up on Nintendo, so I do wax nostalgia here and there. However, I'm not gonna come up here and say like, oh, Pokemon's the greatest, or Mario, it's always good. No,
There's a catch. That Pokemon game is outselling the fuck out of every other Pokemon game that's ever came out.
It's the fastest selling. No, it's the fastest selling Nintendo title ever.
Yep. And so this, we're going to continue to see this. Breath of the Wild 2 is going to come out at the end of my play, which I've been pitching to you guys for a while, and that shit is going to blow the fuck up. And this stock, I mean, it's not going to skyrocket, but I'm thinking at least $15 a share, and my cost basis is $10.47, so I'm in for it.
And if I can chime in a little bit, last time Luce did this kind of a DD was with Stellantis, and I was very happy to buy the calls, the long-term leaps on Stellantis, and they're doing phenomenal.
Thank you, Human Genome. You can collect your paycheck on the way out.
I'm already collecting.
I'm very excited about Nintendo. I'm being very conservative with my DD right now.
I would like to hear some bear cases, some shit. Because honestly, I think it's really hard to talk shit about the business, about the company. And a lot of people will point like, Nintendo, they're not as good as the other video game developers. But if you look at the financials, it's like, I beg to differ. And you look at the data, right? I think there's big like sentiment towards Nintendo that's like, they're for kids. And it's a lot of the games are bullshit and they suck. Just like WattGeek said, I guess the latest Pokemon game is like the shittiest game.
It's fucking terrible.
Selling title ever for
Nintendo. Fucking
Nintendo.
Terrible, dude. Like seriously, like 512-bit textures and that shit. Like shit we haven't seen since the 90s.
Nice. Yeah. So that's Nintendo for you. Like everything you all of you, the bears, the people that hate Nintendo, you could be right. Maybe their video games do suck ass and they're the worst video games, but their fan base is buying the shit out of them and they're going to keep buying the shit out of them. And it's like, you can't get in the way of that. It's really hard to argue against that, against the data.
There's also
honestly think that Chris Pratt's shitty New York accent is the only bear case for Nintendo, to be honest.
Word. Daddy Dealer, go ahead.
So I think, and this is something I brought up the last time WattGeek spoke about this. Unfortunately, the business being great is not something that drives the stock up, right? So,
I agree. Yeah.
Once the company sells the shares, the company's financials are no longer, directly influencing the stock. It's all about supply and demand, and people have to want to invest in Nintendo, right? So, trading is almost more psychology than anything else, right? People have to want the stock. People, the mind share, right? Why is Apple the most valuable stock in the world? Because iPhones are fucking everywhere. You can't escape it. But my only issue, honestly, the only bear case to me for Nintendo is that it's a Japanese stock without a U.S. ticker.
I think the options.
You're not buying, on the U.S. market, and I think that there's no. You'd have to get, and people are gonna probably flame me for this, but like, someone like Kramer talking about it, right? Like if you really want to draw attention to Nintendo, get somebody on Kramer and get him to talk about it.
Yeah. But I mean, you must be against every ADR ever then. And that's a lot. You know what I mean? So I think the main point for Nintendo is the low liquidity. And that was one of the first things I mentioned. Like that is a risk for sure.
Right.
The Nintendo stock, it's in desperate need of liquidity. But again, like that's every ADR, most ADRs. And yeah, that's just a part of like the markets these days. ADRs, right? Like you don't directly own a share, but is effectively a share. And if Japan were to come out and say we're getting rid of ADRs, that would be one of the stupidest decisions made in stock market history. So I think the real risk is liquidity, but I don't think like, oh, it's an ADR. Like, That's more like feels rather than like real risk, I think.
I'm just saying in terms of like getting lots of people interested in it, and
No, that's not what this is about. Fuck. Hey, maybe only 3 people in this whole talk are like, yeah, I like Nintendo too. Great. It doesn't matter. It's not about like getting people interested. We're just trying to share play. Honestly, this was Opinion's idea to have a Nintendo talk. So like, I'm the Nintendo guy, but it wasn't even my fucking idea. So like, I don't care. I said it earlier. Like, short the stock. Don't buy it. I don't give a fuck. I'm just giving you my idea of what I think is a well-valued business and a very long-term business that we usually don't talk about. We don't really talk about companies that are like retirement stocks aside from the big obvious ones. So
I think it's important to point out that this for me is a Wall Street Bets play. Like this, I'm not playing this as a retirement stock. I've got about like $2,000 of the stock before it split, and I fully expect this thing to jump up. I'm saying at least $12, right? Hopefully 15, hopefully 20. It's probably never going to hit 20, but
So
at the end of the day, I'm doubling my money.
You realize that's doubling their market cap. That's adding
understand.
$55 billion to the market cap. And what I was saying is,
I want to point out to you that they've sold 60 million consoles since COVID popped off, which is more than they've ever sold in the history of Nintendo.
Right, and the reason why that's problematic is because they won't be able to maintain that growth trajectory.
The other thing is you're conflating their business, which is great, and I'm not arguing that, with the rise in share price. And the only way the share price goes up is if other people are willing to pay more for every share sold, right? The shares are being traded amongst other traders. The stock can essentially go to zero, and the company can still be relatively fine in the reality of things. It makes it hard for them to raise capital and things like that, but the company doesn't go under because their stock goes to zero. My point being, you're talking about the stock going up 50%. You'd have to have a huge swell of people in looking to buy Nintendo at a higher price than it is today in order for that to happen.
Yeah, we're
talking. What I'm saying is, there's not a lot of interest.
Hang on. Okay, hang on. These are a couple like, frankly, like useless statements. Of course, people have to buy the stock in order for the price to go up. Like that's literally every stock price. Yes, that's a risk. Can we get over this? Like, can we talk more? Hardy, you said something about growth. So they won't be able to keep up growth. Yes, this is definitely a risk. They are expecting, which they're basically on track. We got like 3 months before this is locked in. They're expecting over 20% growth in revenue for this fiscal year, which ends March 31st.
Luce, what I'm saying is trans-COVID growth should not be used to project post-COVID growth.
I wasn't. No, I never said that.
For the rest of those, for everyone else here listening, trans-COVID growth during the pandemic should not be used to project post-COVID growth.
And there's nothing wrong with trans growth. We just want you to know that. So over the long
COVID
term,
or during COVID.
Yes. And over the long term, they have had double-digit growth. So yes, you're gonna have some low years. You're gonna have some big upside years, but over the long term, they do have at least 10% revenue growth if you average it out. So that's what I see, and this goes back into that's why for me it's a very long-term play, because over the long term they should continue to be able to capitalize on their IP, on their consoles, video game sales, theme parks, etc. That long-term growth rate I'm expecting it to increase. Doesn't mean this year or the upcoming year suddenly they're going to take off. It really doesn't mean that. But again, this is Warren Buffett style. I'm looking at the business, the company. They're primed for growth over the long term thanks to their new shift in their strategy. So hopefully they execute well on that.
Thanks, Luce. Do you want to take maybe 1 or 2 more questions to round out your and give kind of like a summary for those who might have joined late? And then we'll go into a more general market discussion up to market open and then afterwards as well.
All right, sure. So just sum up. I'm a valuation guy and fundamentals guy, right? Well, not just that. I also do options trading. But for the purpose of this talk, I'm looking at valuation multiples in the business. It's a very long-term play for Nintendo. So they're your classic Wall Street Bets play. But hey, we haven't had one of these, I don't think, ever, aside from the big obvious stocks, right? Like Apple, Microsoft. So this is a Warren Buffett style play. I'm in it for the long term. I'm invested in the business. There are risks, and those risks include, one, the continued semiconductor chip shortage. This is actually loosening. This was a risk when I originally posted that DD. So this is getting a little bit better. But now I think the biggest risk would be recession. So if recession hits, Nintendo's stock price is surely going to take a hit. They're consumer discretionary. Of course, they're going to take a hit. But if you're worried about impacts on stock prices from a recession, you're probably not buying any stocks, period. Anyways, right? Also, this doesn't mean that you have to go buy Nintendo shares right now if you like the company. You don't have to. This isn't a pump it up. I don't give a shit. Don't buy the shares. Short the shares. I don't care. But recession is definitely a risk, as it is to all other companies and stocks. Nintendo being consumer discretionary, it might be hit more than other companies. Another risk would be execution risk on its IP expansion strategy. This, I would say, is fairly low because of they have a very loyal fan base. So we got the Super Mario Brothers movie coming out. It's not for adults, okay? So like I don't care if it's good from an adult perspective. I just want your kids to go see it. That's it. That's all I care about. So hopefully that occurs, right? But if that goes well, surely they're gonna continue to capitalize on the IP related to digital content, which is a good path to growth for them. Another big risk, which I would say is moderately high, is low trading volume and potentially even short selling risk. So as of now, average trading volume, even after the stock split, is just under 1 million shares traded per day. And some days it's been even as low as like 300K, close to 300K, which is not a lot. They have had days where it's, a couple million shares, stuff like that, right? But volume is still, relative to other stocks, volume's pretty low. They did do the stock split to increase liquidity and make the stock more accessible to retail traders. So there's definitely a chance that they could do that again, which would increase volume. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. It is an ADR, it is OTC, and there are risks associated with that. But it's no different than any other OTC stock, any other ADR. But I would say the biggest difference between Nintendo and those other stocks is that they're not some small company, no-name company. These guys have been around for many decades, and they are a massive company, very strong business. So I wouldn't even compare them to a lot of other ADRs or OTC stocks. So they do have that going for them. So yeah, risk from recession, that's definitely there. I would say that's moderate. Execution risk in the IP expansion strategy, I think it's low because they have a really loyal fan base and they're doing well so far. And low trading volume, which I would say is moderately high risk. So, maybe if you like it, dollar cost average, maybe just always be smart with these plays. Again, this is a very long-term play. They do pay around a 3% dividend, which they recently stated they're committed to for the next fiscal year. So you'll get paid while you sit in your ass and you make YOLOs. You lose money on YOLOs for other stocks. Also, another bear side case was the DK wrap. So I apologize on behalf of Nintendo for the DK wrap.
So I recall very vividly a lot of articles about the video game industry being recession proof in like 2008, 2009. So I did some Googling while you were talking. Nintendo was claimed to be recession proof all the way through 2008. And then about halfway through 2009, there were a bunch of articles that came out that were like, hey, guess what? These video game companies aren't recession proof. So if that all plays out the same way, I think we can expect the first year of recession to be okay. But then afterwards, we probably need to get out of everything, at least video game related.
Yeah, perhaps. And like, again, mark my words, I am not by any means saying Nintendo's recession proof. I wouldn't say that, frankly, about any stock. Surely they'll take a hit from a recession, but again, so will other stocks. They're consumer discretionary, so they might be more sensitive. So that's why dollar cost averaging is decent for the boomers. Like you're not worried about that if it's a damn good company. So it's just business as usual, right? I will say, looking at the stock price during the Great Recession, they did have a ridiculous run up from about $3, under $3 a share, to 16, close to 16 during the crash. So this stock freaking skyrocketed during the crash, which I don't expect to happen, mind you, if we have another crash. And then it did come back down, but over that, say, 2-3 year period, it went from under $3 a share to over $6 a share. So hey, huh?
Well, that's when the Wii came out. So you got to kind of preface that, like, that's when the Wii came out and it had insane sales. And then those sales, when you have sales like that, you're not going to keep them up forever.
Right. So if you're looking at the long-term chart, and you look at the Great Recession, chop off that mountain in the stock price, just completely ignore it. And then you still see this kind of like gradual trend upward. When the Wii U came out, that's when they sucked it up. So, so basically for relating to consoles, even though they're shifting more to digital sales, and that's working very well for them, that should help offset like weak console sales, something like that, right? That is a risk, that the next console they come out with, it's just another lull. So that's where I would point back to overall, their consoles are the best selling consoles in video game history. Like everybody remembers Nintendo's consoles. So they had one stinker, and really that's it so far. So they should be able to do it again.
I think there's one aspect of there's
I think we've been talking about Nintendo for 15 minutes, and Luz, thank you so much for taking the time to talk all about this. Yes.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Oh, here and for those saying trying to pump and dump the stock, how about this? Bear case for all my thesis. PlayStation and Xbox do what Nintendo don't. There you go. Now you should know I'm not a shill.
Does Nintendo have any investment?
So I think, sorry to cut you off, this concludes kind of like our Nintendo talk for today, because we do want to leave some time.
Can I say one thing that has not been mentioned?
So we will move on to kind of like the open community talk and continue on throughout Market Open. But before we do, I want to quickly shout out that the way we choose topics for this is from you. If there's a topic or person that you would like to hear from, or if you would like to talk about something that's market related, obviously, that's near and dear to your heart, please feel free to message us or post it in the comments so that we can get that set up. With that being said, Hardy, do you want to kick off maybe some of your plays or updates on those? Or anyone else, of course.
Real quick, if you still, there was a guy that was cutting an opinion off. If you still have stuff to say, just leave it in comments or stick around. We can talk about it. We're just trying to cut the Nintendo part. That's all. So you can still talk. Just put in the comments or wait till a little later.
I'm not at my normal computer at the moment, so I need to scroll down to find the post. But the plays are in the comments for those who follow them.
All right, shall we go back to Nintendo or?
Yeah, we can talk
So
about
the most interesting play among the list that I posted earlier today would probably be puts on the Qs, mainly because they just touched delta neutral or they just crossed delta neutral. And there's a chance, especially with yesterday's run up, that there's going to be a little bit of a pullback because of a suspected overreaction. So QQQ January 2292 puts for 955 or less. Or if you're feeling more like a degenerate SQQQ calls for a proportional strike in price.
Hardy, do you think that the QQs are not the QQs in per se, but just this whole emphasis on that the early bull rally was a little premature? Do you think it's over advertised, is that it was premature and that there's actually going to be a good week into this bull rally, like positive news?
Well, remember, J-Powell said that unemployment is the highest weighted indicator that they're using, that interest rate increases are working. So we have to wait till tomorrow morning when the official unemployment claims number comes out. If it's higher than expected, expect a lower Fed funds rate increase. If it's lower than expected, very strong chance we'll see another 75 basis points. And I suspect the market will react accordingly.
Thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to drop in and offer some insight. I just got back from a Carnival cruise, and it was packed. It was lit. People were spending lots of money on it. At every port, there was a second or a third Carnival cruise next to us. They were packed. They were lit, partying. And what I'm getting at is their next earnings is coming up in about a week and a half or 2 weeks. And it's going to be the first earnings report with full non-COVID restrictions. The COVID vaccine restrictions ended August 14th. So they got a little bit of that bump in their September 30th earnings. That's why they were able to report 4.3 billion in revenue. They're estimated in December, roughly, I think 3.6 billion. But I'm going to be honest, guys, if they did 4.3 billion in Q3, they're about to blow this out of the water. And that's just my personal thesis based on me physically being on the ship, seeing it packed, and seeing the amount of money being spent on the ship, whether that was at the casino, at the liquor store, the jewelry, on that cruise ship, nobody was thinking about a recession or anything. I highly believe that this Carnival Cruise Line at $9.93 is highly undervalued. I think when this next earnings reports at 5 billion to 5.7 billion, that's possible. It could possibly jump back up to the $17 range. I know Hardy had mentioned that they had some dilution, which may prevent them from ever going back to that $40 range like we see on their historical chart. But just something to watch out. It's a sleeper, and I really do see the value. I went on the ship, I spent money, and not only did I go on it, but 5 of my family members, we all went. It was a Thanksgiving cruise, and yeah, just wanted to throw that in there.
Did anyone
to add to notes? To add to Notes' thesis, I have a cruise booked for December 18, and there are no more staterooms available. So it's going to be a 100% full sailing over Christmas. So I anticipate similar results for Royal Caribbean. And trying to book staterooms on Carnival for near-dated sailings, the number of staterooms available is also much lower than the same time last quarter. So I agree with Notes' thesis, and my main concern is figuring out, as earnings approaches, what the market is expecting. Because if the implied move is higher than the roughly 10% beat, then I may end up just selling an Iron Condor.
I think the question is what happens to guidance. So are you seeing rooms being booked out beyond the holiday season?
I haven't checked, but in terms of guidance, my suspicion, at least for Carnival, is that if they're sailing at capacity, as in no more extra staterooms, that means the only way they can grow is increasing the average customer value per sailing. So more ancillary services. And to be fair, Carnival has been doing a lot of unbundling lately. So restaurants which used to be included as part of your cruise fare now are an upcharge, for example.
Excellent. Thank you. 1 minute to open. Who's got plays?
I posted on my Nintendo DD in Discord.
Thank you.
Hardy, quick question about Home Depot play that you mentioned yesterday. So what's going to be the strike price for that, since I guess stock price moved up a little bit?
Whatever 35 delta ends up being when you decide to enter. What's important is that the market at that moment you decide to play thinks there's a 35% chance that the March expiration for that strike will be in the money. And based off of the sales misses from the stores that we pulled, I anticipate a 20% drop or 20% miss in revenue because of those sales numbers.
35 delta. Gotcha. Thank you.
There's market open, folks. Opinion. We forgot one thing. We were supposed to have Big Lots mom.
Oh yeah, what happened to her?
Hey, yeah, hey, Big Lots guy. If you're in the audience, we can. Do you want to do it tomorrow, opinion? And frankly, it could just be like 5-10 minutes. We just have her on real quick.
Yeah, let's do it. I want to hear from that guy's mom.
Wait, what
Yeah.
happened to that like official media guy?
Official, I don't know about that, but hey, Big Lots guy with the Big Lots mom. If you're in the audience, send me a message or opinion. We'll get your mom on tomorrow, and if you're not there, I'll try to reach out to him. But yeah, they just had earnings. Big Lots had earnings. I'm shorting them, and Big Lots is down 12.5% because I think they fucking stuck. And also, a ghost came to me in the middle of the night inside my home to give me some information. So, I was like, I better do something about this. So yeah, Big Lots is sucking it up.
Grinder's sucking it up.
I mean, isn't that what's supposed to happen?
Hey, I got a quick play. I can't really seem to pick up or down lately. So Zscaler, they're reporting later this evening. I think I want to do a strangle there. Keep it close to the money and just play the volatility. I expect a big move either up or down, whatever they report,
We know if you know.
Kroger reported earnings today.
How was it? Were you invested in Kroger?
I invest for the dividend, but it's up. I think 6 cents is what they beat it by.
Nice, looking at it now. Kroger has quite a few competitors. I think Albertsons the first one, like, to mine.
Another big one that people don't follow because it's actually privately held is Publix, but Kroger and Publix are very similar realistically.
Anybody shorting Carvana?
Oh yes, I have a synthetic short on them, and then I have put spreads as well that should be making money soon.
Yeah, I just noticed it was up like 10% over the past couple days, and I'm pretty sure they're going to announce that they're going to lose like $700 billion this quarter. So,
Yeah,
I saw they had like 22,000 employees. Is this true? I mean, what do they do at Carvana? 22,000 people.
They get stock-based comp, and then they sell those shares, and then they leave, and then the company dies.
Wonderful.
They overpay for inventory.
I mean, why would they think a vending machine in a car would be a great idea? I understand that's a great publicity stunt. I mean, but was that all it was? Like a publicity thing? Is that an advertisement thing?
Yeah, it was a very fancy advertisement, but soon with the recession, those car vending machines will convert into ghetto towers.
Well, I heard through the grapevine, a very official source, that they're going to turn those into grow houses.
Long on Tilray.
They saw that Wolfsburg plant in Germany and were like, wow, that's really cool.
Hey, I guess something that'll trigger people here. How about Meta squeezing the past 2 days? Huh? What you guys got to say about that? Remember they were low 90s? You're still talking shit about them?
Not me. I
don't want to talk
be
about
triggered.
That.
They still need to go to 50, man.
I still have nightmares.
They'll go to 50 and somebody say they'll still need to go to 25, or they'll go to 200 and someone say, oh no, they shouldn't be here. And then I'll make a lot of money.
I'll be curious to see how the Quest sells with the price hike this season, because it was one of the hot items last year.
My forecast is approximately 3 unit sales of the Quest. Yeah.
Come on, Spy, go down.
Didn't they sell like 2 million last last holiday season?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just yeah, I don't know how many of the new ones they're gonna sell. It is fucking pricey as hell.
No, not the new one. The Quest 2. But they hiked the price, but now they're giving you like 2 different games with it for free to offset the price.
What games?
Beat Saber and Resident Evil 4.
I mean, Resident Evil 4, I remember when that game came out, and then they kept re-releasing it, like newer editions. And my friends and I, we were just like, yeah, just add a new gun and we'll buy the game again. It was such a great game. I don't know if people still care about that game or not, but
yeah, I
So
mean, it
it's
looked. Go ahead.
it's Skyrim. You'll buy 1,000 copies of it.
all right. I'm out for now. Might come back later just in case anybody has questions. Nintendo, you can always just like leave messages or DM or use Discord. Use our Wall Street Bets Discord if you want.
Paychecks in the mail. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Lou.
Yes, and I take Zelle. So if anybody wants me to pump and dump another stock, just send me Zelle.
Do you know if it would ever be possible for them to list directly?
I don't. I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest.
There's no like Japanese law that would prevent them or anything like that.
Probably not. But I don't know if there are any Japanese stocks that are directly listed. There must be one. I don't know.
Can I ask a question about the bear case on the Nintendo DD?
I was just about to leave. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if you thought about Valve. So Valve have just released their Steam Deck. They're flying off the shelves, and for me, they're the most like direct competitor with the handheld aspect to the console.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Nobody mentioned that.
I can. The Steam Deck is a PC, and so it's cool. Don't get me wrong. I got like my Steam library is worth way fucking too much money, so it's cool to me. But it's never going to be the same thing. Like if I'm, it's cold. If I'm going to snuggle up on the couch and play a video game with my kids, it's not going to be on the Steam Deck. More than likely, it's probably going to be some Pokemon title or something like that.
Yeah. See, for me, I've got 2 Nintendo Switches, and I've just bought a Steam Deck. Very bullish.
No, I was just kidding.
Massive Nintendo fan. Always will be. I think you guys were saying this earlier, right? Nintendo's fan base, me included, are always going to keep buying their games. I will buy every single console just so I can play Zelda. It's like that, right? But for me, what Valve have done is they've basically made it possible for me to do my PC gaming on the move. So all the titles. So I play Metroidvanias. Like
I
2D.
see you. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So for me, instead of buying like those Metroidvanias on the Nintendo store, because a lot of these games are cross-platform, I just buy them on the Steam Deck now. So that's revenue that Nintendo are not making as a result of Valve and the Steam Deck.
So a few things, and I agree. I agree, definitely. A few things I've noticed is one, okay, I'm not as big of a gamer as I used to be. Frankly, I don't play games that much anymore. But again, Nintendo it's about the stock price. I'm an investor, not a gamer when it comes to Nintendo. But before, I would often find myself comparing video games on PC to the Switch, and I would just Google, okay, Hollow Knight, should I get it for Steam on Steam, or should I get it for the Switch? And I would actually do a little bit of research, and what I would tend to find is across the board in terms of graphics and playability, or I won't say playability, I'll say in terms of graphics and
frame rate and things like that, right?
Yeah. It was, Steam would always win,
Yeah.
There were a surprising amount of people that would say, but I love playing this on the Switch and I love playing it wherever I go, right? So now that you have the Steam Deck, it's like, well, why would you get it on the Switch? Here's the thing. If you already have the Switch, you don't have to shell out hundreds of dollars to be able to play whatever game that is on the go. and you're still thinking like, okay, if I have the Switch, do I really want to pay $400, however much it costs, $500 for a Steam Deck to play the same game that I already had? Or if it's in the future, okay, this is a game that I don't have yet. I could get it on the Switch, but I still need to shell out that extra $500 to effectively buy a console that I already have in some form, right? Now, this is just me, we'll say I'm being biased, but I do think it does cost. It is expensive, right? So it's not like
it's a valid argument.
it is
It's a valid
competitive.
argument because not everyone can just go out and buy the latest and greatest and
Yeah.
whatever, multiple consoles. That's true.
But I do think beforehand, I don't think Nintendo Switch just commanded the digital market, for games that were also on Steam. I think it's always been a split, right? So maybe they do lose some for sure. I'm not sure if it would have a big impact. And then at the end of the day, I would say, okay, let's say they lose, like, what is it? Like a percent, maybe a couple percent in revenue. I think that'd be like really big, to be honest. And then I would point to the sales of their exclusive titles and be like, so what? Like they're, so surely a bear case, I think, but I don't think it's that significant in terms of actual like sales dollars. And
so the reason I disagree with you there is just because back in the 90s when I've on my shelf I've got a Super Nintendo, a Nintendo 64, I've got GameCube. So back then, before the PlayStation came out, before the Xbox came out, as you know, Nintendo were crushing it. But the whole gaming industry as a whole, this was before Twitch, before streaming, before there were professional gamers, these big tournaments and stuff. What Sony did and Microsoft did was they kind of made gaming a thing for adults. And I think what Valve are doing is they're making mobile gaming a thing for adults. And what preceded the advent of the PlayStation was kind of Nintendo's decline for a decade or so. So I'm thinking long term, that's bearish, right, for Nintendo.
So if I can, there's a company, I think some sort of technology or something called DENA. And this article has kind of slipped under the radar for me. Nintendo just did a partnership with that company or whatever. That whole effort is Nintendo moving to a mobile space. Like
I didn't even talk about that. Yeah.
The Pokemon Go, that whole thing popped off. So, Niantic and blah, blah.
If I could wrap up my earlier point real quick.
Sure.
There are definitely a few things we need to talk about that are like really big for Nintendo. I agree. I don't think the Steam Deck is. I don't think it's like a non-event. I think it is competition and it could affect sales. Just everything else held constant. Or as you savvy economists know, ceteris paribus. I don't think the sales will be hit. I don't think it'll be a significant hit. But with regards to the shift in like the gamer audience, right? The past, I think there was a study done, and apparently the mature content now available on the Switch is more diversified than Xbox. So something to think about. I will say I need to verify that because I just saw it once, but it does imply that the adult content is now like there on the Switch, so it shouldn't be too much of a stigma going forward. The only other point I wanted to make is there's a company that has made it's like a card. It's basically like a Nintendo Switch video game cartridge that will let you basically hook up wirelessly to your PC. And you can play whatever Steam games, you can play whatever games you want on your Switch. That guy's trying to scale it. If that happens, then the whole thing is a wash. And why would you get the Steam Deck if you already have the Switch and you just buy that little card, you play anything? Screw paying $500 or whatever on the Steam Deck. However, that hasn't, like, maybe Nintendo will be like, no, we don't want that. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that.
Interesting to hear the counter argument to that. Yeah, cool.
But yeah, I agree. It is competitive. They are competition for sure. With that, I am out. If you have other questions, just hit me up on Discord.
Have a good one, Luz. I'd like to know more about the DNA company. If anybody finds anything out, I came across it. I haven't done any research on it yet.
Yeah, I saw that comment to my comment, and I also didn't know about that. I mean, it just looks like it's a further partnership for mobile development. You know, that company helped them with the last 4 or 5 titles that they published to mobile. So they're just recommitting that, and apparently it's a big deal for Nintendo because it's something about it being like 10% of their business in value. So it's definitely a serious commitment on Nintendo's part to hit mobile. There was some sales figures on there too that like Animal Crossing was still doing like 300 million revenue per quarter or something like that, and consumables like skins and stuff. And I'm gonna say that like Fire Heroes Legend was like somewhere in like 700-800 million. So significant money being made.
Yeah, I think it's another thing that I'd like to point out. I bought the Mario and Rabbids, Mario versus Rabbids, whatever that crap was. My son wanted it for any title that just came out. I bought that the other day. Seems cool. Played it a little bit, but it's the first title that I've seen that was $70. And I know they've been talking about that, and you know the industry or the retail us, we're like, no, we don't want to pay $70 for a fucking video game. But I think we all know it's going that way, and I fully expect like Breath of the Wild 2 and that kind of stuff to be $70 also. Actually, does anybody know how much Pokemon was? Scarlet, Violet, whatever.
We usually a part of that additional cost is due to licensing, right? So third parties have to pay Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony a licensing fee. So Nintendo should be able to get by without increasing their prices, but doesn't mean they won't.
Hey, quick chime in with the Super Mario movie. Lou said that that movie's not for adults; it's going to be for kids. If we're in a recession, people are going to get depressed. And on the psychology standpoint of things, what do people love most? It's probably nostalgia. So I think a lot of adults are going to go see this movie. But that's just me.
You know what? How about give me a Doge emoji if you've seen the original like 1980s Mario, the movie.
Unfortunately.
What a spectacular piece of garbage that was.
I'm saying though, it was trash, but we all love it.
Excuse me, that movie had a Bob-omb in it, and I bet you this new one won't have a Bob-omb. Checkmate.
I gotta say, I saw the new trailer, and I'm pretty hyped about this. Like, I just thought of all the times I played Super Mario, and then Super Mario on 64, and I'm like, that nostalgia thing's hitting me kind of hard. And I'm gonna be 34, and I will definitely go see this movie. So
yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm 37. I'm definitely gonna take my kids, but yeah, I'm not necessarily going for the kids.
yeah, I mean, you're going for you. You're an adult. You're like, dude, I grew up playing this game. I want to see it in a movie. I mean, why do you think all these boomers went and saw these Marvel movies? Because they grew up reading the comics, and they're like, oh shit, this is on a big screen. I want to see this stuff. Like,
I mean, I'm going for Princess Peach. I don't know about you, Shills.
I think what's the Space Jam? How many adults went to watch the Space Jam movie without children?
Wasn't it direct to HBO Max?
Hey, you're probably right. I don't know. I didn't watch it. I just know that it like spun off the whole thirst trap.
Oh, come on, Spy. Go down. Why are you trading sideways? I hate this market.
that's all I got. Have a good day, guys. Talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.
Good one. Should we wrap it up here?
Spy is launching.
We can opinion. I wanted to speak to Trilogy Metals. Somebody brought us that the other day. TMQ. That guy's actually up.
That was me.
Yeah, that's looking good. I like it. I found an article this morning, which was posted about the time we were talking about it, that says Q4 2023 is when we should know definitively about that road, if not before.
Awesome.
Who's pumping Carnival right now? I told you guys I haven't gotten my entry in yet. You're messing up my play.
Sorry.
Come on, Philly. First you buy positions, then you tell Wall Street Bets, then you
Whoever
sell the positions.
whoever
like
shared that TMQ, thank you.
Yeah, it's going well so far. Opinion, it's up to you. I don't have anything else.
Yep, I think we'll turn it off here. But thanks a lot for coming out. I hope you enjoyed the Nintendo talk. I know it was a little bit long for an hour for kind of a boomer stock. So I don't know if maybe a better format is just doing 30 minutes or what. But on Tuesday, hopefully we'll have Rad and I can't recall who the other person was talking about mining stocks on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we will have a text-based AMA with Ortex. And then afterwards, after market close, we'll do a Reddit talk listening into the, what's it called, GameStop earnings for Q3. So exciting stuff. With that being said, thank you everyone for listening in, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Don't lose too much money.
Have a good Thursday, everybody.